Could God have created the universe with different laws and still created us exactly the way that we are? Some skeptics use this response against the fine-tuning argument, and I don't think it's very good. Um, John Leslie, the philosopher, used an illustration. Imagine that you have a gigantic wall that is full of flies. It's just covered in flies. But the other side of the wall is blank, and there's only a single fly on the other side of the wall. Even if you fired a gun at the wall, it is still nevertheless fantastically improbable that you would hit that fly, even if on the other side of the wall there were a whole bunch of flies, so that it was virtually guaranteed that you would hit at least one. Now, in the case of the fine tuning of the universe, when it comes to could God have created with different laws? Yeah, he could have. But does that really negate the inference to design? It's kind of like saying, well, this automobile, it looks extremely complicated. It looks extremely complex. It doesn't look like it could have come together by chance and or necessity. Looks like it might have been designed, but the automotive factory could have made it differently. They could have made it with more seats or fewer seats, or they could have made the car blue or white or green, or they could have made it a two-seater, a four-seater. Um, the fact that God made it this way and not another way is not an argument that God did it at all, any more than it would be if you would say, well, the automotive factory could have made the car this way or any number of ways. Now, God did have to finely tune the universe in exactly this way, given the specific laws that he chose to create. Uh, a universe with the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the force of gravity, and so on. If you're going to have a universe like with these specific laws, then these constants and quantities have to be finely tuned in just this specific way. But we do know that God is able to create a universe with different laws. Hugh Ross talks about this in his book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. One obvious reason is that in the eschaton, or the new heavens and the new earth, the new creation, the universe is going to have to run by different laws if it's going to last forever. If God is going to have an eternally, a physical universe that's going to go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, with resurrected Christians living in that universe, then, for example, it can't be governed by the law of entropy. You can't have stars burning energy and dying out because that kind of universe just can't exist forever. Scientists tell us that this universe, I mean, it's been around for a long, long time. It's been around for about 14 billion years, but it can't last forever. I mean, even if we create, even if humans advance in technology and we're able to leave our planet and we find some other planet that's habitable for us, we can't just keep moving homes forever. Eventually, every single star is going to die. Every single star is going to run out of fuel to burn. And this is what scientists call the heat death of the universe. So for God to create an eternally old universe after the second coming of Christ, it's going to have to be governed by different laws. Otherwise, it won't be able to exist forever. But when atheists try to use that point as an argument against the inference to design from fine tuning, that's just fallacious. Again, like I said, that's like saying that your car wasn't designed, or that airplane that helicopter that's going by wasn't designed because, well, the people who made that didn't have to make a helicopter. They could have made an airplane instead. It's just not a good argument. Okay, so this comment is in response to my previous TikTok in which I talked about whether or not God could create a universe with different laws, and its relation to the fine tuning of the universe. And this just misunderstands what I said. I explicitly said God can make universes run by different laws, and indeed, he will one day. He has to. Otherwise, in Revelation 21 and 22, the new heavens and the new earth, with redeemed, resurrected humans, we're not going to be able to live forever in that universe. That universe is going to experience a heat death if it's run by exactly the same laws as this one. So is God just going to keep making new universes to replace the ones that died, like batteries? I don't think so. But what I said was that if he creates a universe with these laws, these physical properties, if he chooses to create a universe governed by the strong nuclear force, governed by the weak nuclear force, governed by the electromagnetic force, the force of gravity, etc., then the strong nuclear force is going to have to be finely tuned just so that you can have the just right physical elements, so that you don't have a universe that is completely devoid of hydrogen or a universe that has nothing but hydrogen. You're going to need a universe that expands at the just right rate in the early first few seconds of its existence. Otherwise, it'll expand too rapidly, and all the matter, gas, and dust will fly apart too quickly for gravity to take all of the matter, dust, and gas in the universe and condense them into galaxy stars and planets. If God creates a universe governed by the laws that he chose to create, then gravity is going to have to be just so that stars don't burn too quickly and die before life has a chance to evolve, or that it's so weak that um, that it's not able to put the brakes on the expansion of the universe, so the universe flies apart too quickly and galaxy stars and planets cannot form. So it's like, you know, an automobile manufacturer can create any kind of car that he wants, that they want to. But if they're going to make motorcycles, then it's going to have two wheels, and it's going to have a sidecar if it's going to have more than one person transport. Uh, who if it's going to if you're going to make a minivan, it's going to have to be bigger than a Volkswagen Beetle. The manufacturer can make any type of car that he wants. But if he's going to make this specific type of car, then he's going to have to do it this specific way, and it's going to have these specific properties. Now, if he wanted to make some kind of other car, then he could do that. If God wanted to make some kind of other universe with whatever, we can't even imagine what that might be, that has some kind of, different fundamental forces than the strong nuclear force and weak nuclear force and so on, he could do that, and then he wouldn't have to finely tune it in the way that the universe is finely tuned. But if he makes a universe with the strong nuclear force, then the strong nuclear force is going to have to be finely tuned to 1 part in 10 to the 30th power, or you're not going to have matter. Well, I didn't bring in scripture to defend the fine-tuning argument, but I brought it in because I was responding to a specific, what I interpreted to be a theological question from my friend Athanasius. In the cumulative case for the Christian worldview, ultimately we will look back at the fine-tuning and view them through Christian lenses, and that is when scripture will become relevant. But insofar as defending the design inference, I don't even need to argue that God is able to create a universe with different laws. I mean, the argument is from the improbability of these constants and quantities, each taking the values that they do. It has what William Dembski of the Discovery Institute called specified complexity. It is improbability that conforms to a specific pattern. And there are only three options on the table that philosophers and scientists have discussed over the last 50 years as to how to best account for this um, fact of physics, either physical necessity, chance, or design. So the syllogism, the argument that I use, is William Lane Craig's syllogism. It goes like this: 1, fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. 2, it is not due to physical necessity or chance. 3, therefore it is due to design. And the first premise is indisputable because it's just a list of alternatives. You can't really dispute a list. So the real debate is in premise 2. If we can rule out physical necessity and chance, then that leaves design as the best explanation. Really, when you get down to it, whether or not God is able to create a different universe with different laws of physics, or whether the universe could have had different fundamental forces that we can't even imagine, just like it could have like different colors that we can't even imagine, that's really kind of a red herring. Like, intelligent design is still the best explanation for why the universe is life permitting, why all of these parameters take the forms that they do. When you really think about it, this whole appeal to other physics or different physics really does nothing to undermine the inference to design or to refute premise 2. The fine-tuning argument is not meant to get you the omnipotence of God as an attribute. Not every argument for God's existence gets you every single attribute of God. The Kalam cosmological argument won't tell you whether God is omniscient or even morally good, for example. And the fine-tuning argument shows us that there is a designer smart enough to finely tune the constants and quantities to extreme precision for life to exist, and is also powerful enough to control the very forces of the universe itself. But that doesn't necessarily translate to omniscience and omnipotence. You would have to look at other arguments to get those attributes. Really, the only argument for God's existence that gets you all of the superlative attributes or the omni attributes would be the modal ontological argument. Now, as to whether the fine tuning, again, it is irrelevant whether or not God could have created a universe with different laws of physics that could support different kinds of life forms. Yes, God could definitely do that. But if he's going to create a universe with these laws, then they have to be finely tuned in this way in order for these kinds of life forms to exist. Now, of course, God is omnipotent. God could basically have a universe with no planets, no stars, no galaxies, and he could just miraculously preserve human beings who float in space. um, he can do that. I mean, he was able to keep Daniel and his friends from burning in a fire, being inside of a raging inferno. A raging inferno is not conducive for the existence of life, and yet Daniel and his friends survived in that environment. But I think as Christian theists, we want to affirm that God has created a stable order where his constant miraculous intervention, his overriding or suspending of the way natural processes usually works, that we don't want to posit that God is doing that on the Christian worldview. And in fact, I have an article on as part of my gospel reliability series that just went up on the blog over at www.cerebralfaith.net, where I talk about how the usual way God works is through natural processes, what theologians call ordinary providence, and miracles are the exception to the norm. And there's a reason for that. God usually performs a miracle. He does something, he causes something to happen in the world that doesn't normally happen under regular natural processes, like raising the dead or parting the Red Sea, because he is establishing his prophet as actually being from him. Miracles serve as signs to validate his messengers. So again, for one thing, it's a red herring. It does nothing to to undermine the inference to design. I mean, the only way to undermine the inferences to design is to prop up the chance hypothesis or prove that it was due to physical necessity. And you could do this by maybe producing evidence for a multiverse or something, but there's no evidence for that. And there's a lot of problems with the multiverse argument that I've gotten into in some of my written material and in an earlier TikTok. But insofar as God's omnipotence, yeah, he could create a universe that is life prohibiting and just miraculously sustain humans and cats and dogs, and um we could all live in a raging inferno and just walk around, and the whole world could be a God could create God could put life on the sun and just miraculously preserve it, keep it from being burned up. But why would he do that? He's not going to do that. God clearly wanted to create a stable, natural order. And in order to do that, he's going to have to create a universe that will naturally be life permitting.